Hi, my name is Janet Haro, and today I will be talking about Walter Mischel. Walter was born in Vienna, Austria on February 22nd, 1930. He is the youngest of two brothers, and when he was younger, they lived in the same neighborhood as Sigmund Freud. Later on in 1938, the Nazis occupied the city of Vienna, and Walter and his family had to flee Vienna and immigrate to the United States when he was only 8 years old. His family settled down and found a place in Brooklyn, New York, and he soon became the valedictorian of his senior class and got a full-ride scholarship to study at New York University. At first, he had chosen a path in pre-medical studies, but then he changed his major to study psychology instead and graduated in 1951. He then received his master's in 1953 from the City College of New York and his PhD in 1956 from Ohio State University. He was a professor at different universities, so he first started teaching at the University of Colorado from 1956 to 1958. Then he went to Harvard University where he was a professor from 1958 to 1962, and Stanford University from 1962 to 1982, and lastly at Columbia University from 1983 until he retired in the year 2017. He moved to Palo Alto in 1977, and he joined Albert Bandura, Gordon Bower, Ellen Markman, Philip Zimbardo, and many other psychologists in what became the golden era, where the unstated goal was to shake up psychology. He was frustrated with the traditional research models of the time that were mostly influenced by Freud, stating that they were inconsiderate of the context in terms of the experimental situation and individuals' internal goals. He began his study on delayed gratification in the 1960s. Delayed gratification is defined as the ability to abstain from instant but less desirable outcomes and defer them for more desirable outcomes. He passed away very recently on September 12, 2018 at the age of 88 from pancreatic cancer. So Walter did not have a specific view on women, but he did know that gender development was influenced by social environment. So he knew that behaviors preceded the cognition. So if one is rewarded for engaging in the appropriate gender behavior, then they will continue with that behavior. So parents will reward the boys for engaging in male appropriate toys and engaging activities with their father, and it is the same for females and female gendered behavior. So toddlers who use distraction strategies during a brief separation from their mother were able to, at age 5, delay immediate gratification longer for more valued rewards, and toddlers who explored at a distance from a controlling mother when she tried to engage the child also delayed longer and used more effective delay strategies at age 5 compared with toddlers who did not distance themselves. So in a way, a mother's behavior and the separation with their child is important in understanding the use of effect delay of gratification strategies for children. Walter and his family were all Jewish, and there could only be one work where he incorporated religion, and that was on research that covered spirit possessions of the Shingo worshippers. He provided detailed descriptions of the rituals that were associated with possession based on his learning theory. And this was prior to his development of his social cognitive learning theory, so he was just getting a lot of information on how people practice religion all over the world. And he found that social scientists who study the religious practices of the world are more likely to be more receptive and appreciative of different religious practices. And their multi-level interdisciplinary paradigm for studying religion serves as an example for future research in religion and spirituality. Walter's theory is known as the social learning theory. In this theory, behavior can best be predicted only when one takes into consideration the specific situation in which the behavior happens. If the environment has not changed a lot, we can expect that past behavior as a reasonable predictor of current behavior. However, if the environment changes dramatically, the individual may act in unpredictable ways. An individual's behavior is influenced by two things: the specific attributes of a given situation, and the manner in which he perceives the situation. Walter emphasized that we have individual differences, so our values and expectancies also have to be considered in order to predict a person's behavior and personality. There are 5 person variables that contribute to the condition of a specific situation, and they are used to predict how a person will most likely behave. The first one is competencies, which are our intellectual capabilities as well as social skills. Cognitive strategies, which are the different perceptions of a special event. So for example, what may be threatening for me can be challenging for someone else. Then there are expectancies that are expected results of different behaviors that are realized by the person inside his mind. Subjective values are the respective value of each possible outcome of various behaviors, and self-regulatory systems, which are the groups of rules and standards that people adopt to in order to regulate their behavior. Walter speaks about people that are shy in certain situations. So if I am shy in a very specific situation and not shy in others, that means that my shyness is situation dependent, and that's not my personality incomplete. Walter's most famous work came with delayed gratification. His studies began in the late 1950s, and he was able to examine the conditions under which children choose immediate gratification or whether they can delay gratification in order to obtain a larger reinforcer at a later time. The ability to delay gratification, according to him, is essential for the development of self-control. In this study, he and his colleagues offered 4-year-old children the opportunity to grab a marshmallow. But if the child could wait until the researcher left the room and came back, then the child could have 2 marshmallows. Some children grabbed the marshmallow as soon as the experimenters left, but others were able to wait anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. It was not easy for them. The children who waited demonstrated a variety of behaviors to distract themselves from the marshmallow. They would play, sing, cover their eyes so that they didn't have to look at the marshmallow. Because this was a longitudinal study, the most striking results were actually obtained years later, where Walter and his colleagues were able to track down the former 4-year-old subjects as they were graduating from high school. The individuals who had delayed gratification as 4-year-olds were significantly more personally effective and self-assertive, and they were better able to cope with life's frustrations. While some people are naturally better at cooling than others, both children and adults can learn mental distancing techniques to strengthen their self-control. Children are shaped and taught from infancy what is appropriate behavior, and this is due to rewards and punishments that are given to them as a cause of what they want their behavior to be or not. For example, when a kid is throwing a tantrum and they are screaming loudly, they are punished for that behavior, and it reinforces the notion that they shouldn't be acting like that. So a big factor in infancy is the separation from the mother and the child and how the child reacts. It can be a strong indicator as to how effectively they can use delayed gratification or not. For example, children who use distraction strategies and brief separation were able to, at age 5, delay immediate gratification for a more valued reward. To Walter, infancy is not as important as being a toddler, where children are developing from howling, screaming kids to individuals that could sit through something that required concentration. And he frequently did this through the observation of his 3 kids as they were growing up. Walter believes that people are capable of change and that individuals can begin to learn new social conditions that allow for considerable change in behavior over time. So for example, when you start working somewhere new, you are more reserved, you are shy, and over time you get to know your coworkers, your boss, and you start being more outgoing and just feeling more like yourself. So in that situation, you are learning new social conditions, and that changes your personality overall. Walter also says that people can use their brains to think differently about situations, also to reframe them and to reconstruct them. and to also reconstruct themselves. So all in all, personality can change, and we are capable of doing so. Walter's education left him frustrated with the orthodox research models of the time, many of which were influenced by Sigmund Freud. He also believed that these models failed to adequately consider context, both the particular experimental situation and people's internal goals. It is also very interesting to note that he worked alongside Bandura while they were at Stanford University, and they conducted research together. So they were both long colleagues, and both of them are really famous psychologists to this day. Even though he was learning just how important self-control is to success in life, he couldn't keep himself from smoking, and he told himself that he was perfectly in control, that smoking kept him calm, balanced, and focused. He even convinced himself that all of the negative repercussions he had learned about it had nothing to do with him. It was not until one day in the late 1960s when he saw a man with lung cancer in the halls of Stanford's medical school, with his chest exposed, head shaved, and X marks all over his body where the radiation would go. That's when he realized that he was only fooling himself and that he needed to stop smoking. So that is when it all clicked for him. And from that moment on, when he wanted a cigarette, he would create a picture in his mind of the man in the hallway, and he said that he changed the objective value of the cigarette, and it went from something that he craved to something really disgusting, and he stopped smoking since then. So that, I think, is very important, and that was very interesting because he learned from his own research and his own work. According to a social learning theory, Walter would say that my behavior changes depending on the situations that I am faced with. For example, I am a very outgoing person. I'm very friendly around my friends and family. But once I'm faced with new situations, I become more shy and reserved, and I don't open up so easily. It takes a while for me to become comfortable. So once I learn new social conditions, such as getting to know my work partners or my class group, I become more comfortable with them and I start opening up more, which extremely changes my behavior in the long run and changes the environment in which I am a part of. He would also say that I have a high delayed gratification because I didn't just stop at high school. I am also pursuing my bachelor's degree and hopefully my master's degree as well. So he would say that my delayed gratification is very high and that I am waiting for something bigger. So I am comparing Walter with Albert Bandura. Some similarities are that they are both social learning theories. Um, they also believe that behavior is precedent to observation, and they both studied self-regulatory behavior in children together. Differences with them are that Bandura studied aggression in children through modeling, through the use of a Bobo doll, and Bandura believes that behavior, personal factors, environmental factors are all equal, and Walter believes that the most important factor is the specific situation that one is placed in, while Bandura believed that behavior could also cause the environment. I wanted to study Walter and his ideas because I enjoy and I agree with him on the social learning theory and that specific environments create a different response from the same person. I also admire him for simply wanting to go against what most people believed at the time. He wasn't a fan of Freud's ideas, and instead he desired to know more about how people can change over time. Also, after learning more about his background and how his family was able to escape the Nazi-occupied Vienna, I see Walter as a very inspirational and strong person who overcame hate and pursued something greater for himself.